In the bustling streets of New York City, Maria, a young beggar girl, wandered the crowded sidewalks, her eyes scanning the ground for loose change or discarded items that might offer her some hope for the day. Life had never been easy for her. With her mother sick and bedridden, Maria had become the sole provider for the two of them. Despite her circumstances, she held on to a deep sense of kindness and integrity, values her mother had instilled in her since childhood. One chilly autumn afternoon, as Maria was making her way through a narrow alley, something caught her eye: a large, black suitcase, slightly worn but still in good condition. Curious, she approached it, her heart pounding with both excitement and fear. Could this be a sign of luck? As she unzipped the suitcase, her eyes widened in shock. Inside, neatly arranged and sparkling under the dim light, were dozens of diamonds, each one more brilliant than the last. But that wasn't all. Tucked into a side pocket of the suitcase was a small card with a name and contact number: Richard Wellington. Realizing the immense value of what she had found, Maria's first thought was not of keeping the riches for herself, but of finding the rightful owner. She knew the diamonds weren't hers, and her conscience wouldn't allow her to take something that didn't belong to her. With trembling hands, she pulled out an old, beat-up cell phone, a gift from a kind stranger months ago, and dialed the number on the card. "Hello?" A deep, authoritative voice answered. "Hi, is this Mr. Richard Wellington?" Maria asked, her voice shaking. "Yes, who is this?" the man replied, his tone a mix of curiosity and concern. "My name is Maria. I found a suitcase with your name on it. It's full of diamonds," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. There was a moment of silence on the other end. "Where are you?" Richard asked, his voice now filled with urgency. Maria gave him her location, and within minutes, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her. Out stepped a tall, well-dressed man in his early 40s, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings until they landed on her. Despite his wealth and power, there was a softness in his gaze when he saw the young girl holding the suitcase. "You found this and called me?" he asked, clearly astonished. Maria nodded, holding out the suitcase. "I thought you might need it back." Richard took the suitcase, his hands brushing against hers for a brief moment. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. "Most people wouldn't have done what you did." Maria simply shrugged. "It wasn't mine to keep." Richard, still amazed by the young girl's honesty, couldn't let her walk away just like that. "Would you join me for lunch?" he asked, his eyes searching hers for any sign of hesitation. Maria hesitated, glancing down at her worn-out clothes. "I'm not really dressed for a fancy place," she said, her voice filled with self-doubt. Richard smiled warmly. "Don't worry about that. I just want to get to know the person who did something so extraordinary." Reluctantly, Maria agreed, and they headed to a nearby restaurant, one of Richard's favorites. As they sat down, Maria felt out of place among the polished silverware and elegant decor, but Richard made her feel at ease, talking to her as if they were old friends. Throughout the meal, they talked about everything: her life, her mother's illness, and how she managed to stay so kind despite the hardships she faced. Richard, who had grown up in a world of privilege, was moved by her story and inspired by her resilience. As they finished their lunch, Richard reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek business card. "This is my personal number," he said, handing it to her. "If you ever need anything at all, don't hesitate to call me." Maria took the card, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you, Mr. Wellington. I'll keep it safe." Richard smiled, though there was a trace of sadness in his eyes as he said, "Call me Richard, and I hope we meet again." They parted ways, with Maria walking back to her small apartment, clutching the card tightly in her hand. Despite the surreal encounter, she knew she couldn't rely on a billionaire's kindness to solve her problems. She had to keep going, keep fighting for her and her mother's survival. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, yet Maria never called Richard. She kept his card in a small tin box under her bed, a reminder of the kindness he had shown her, but she never felt right about reaching out. Life continued to be a struggle, with Maria working odd jobs and doing whatever she could to provide for her mother. Richard, on the other hand, found himself thinking about Maria more often than he expected. He had met countless women in his life, beautiful, wealthy, sophisticated, but none had left such a lasting impression on him as the humble beggar girl who returned his suitcase without expecting anything in return. He couldn't understand it, but there was something about her honesty, her humility, that he couldn't forget. Despite his busy life, Richard found himself hoping she would call, just so he could hear her voice again. But the call never came. Almost a year had passed since their encounter, and Maria's life took a turn for the worse. Her mother's health had deteriorated rapidly, and one night, she was rushed to the hospital with severe complications. The doctors told Maria that her mother needed an immediate surgery, a surgery that Maria could never afford. Desperate and with no other options, Maria remembered the card Richard had given her. Her heart raced as she fished it out from the tin box, her hands trembling as she dialed the number. "Hello?" Richard's familiar voice answered, instantly recognizable. "Richard, it's Maria," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I need your help. My mom, she needs surgery, and I can't afford it. I promise I'll pay you back, I just—" "Maria," Richard interrupted, his voice softening, "you don't need to pay me back. I'll take care of everything. Where are you?" Maria gave him the name of the hospital, and within the hour, Richard was there, arranging for the best doctors and covering all the costs. He stayed with Maria throughout the night, offering her comfort and support as her mother underwent surgery. When the operation was over, and the doctors assured them it had been a success, Maria broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the kindness he had shown her. "You didn't have to do this," she sobbed, her heart full of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you. You've already done more for me than you realize," Richard said gently, wiping away her tears. "You showed me that there's still goodness in the world. Saving your mother is the least I can do." From that day on, Richard visited Maria and her mother regularly at the hospital. He brought flowers, sat by her mother's bedside, and made sure they had everything they needed. As the days turned into weeks, a bond began to form between them, one that went beyond gratitude or friendship. Richard found himself looking forward to his visits, not just to check on Maria's mother, but to spend time with Maria herself. Maria, in turn, began to see Richard in a new light. He wasn't just a billionaire or a benefactor. He was kind, compassionate, and genuinely cared about her and her mother. She found herself smiling more, laughing even, in his presence. And though she tried to push the feelings aside, she couldn't deny the growing affection she felt for him. One evening, as they were sitting together in the hospital garden, Richard finally confessed his feelings. "Maria," he began, his voice serious yet tender, "I've come to care for you more than I ever thought possible. You're not like anyone I've ever met, and I can't imagine my life without you in it." Maria looked at him, her heart racing. "Richard, I care about you too, but we come from such different worlds. I'm just a poor girl trying to survive. You're a millionaire with everything you could ever want. How could this possibly work?" Richard reached out and took her hand, his gaze steady. "I don't care about where you come from, Maria. What matters to me is who you are. Your kindness, your strength, your heart. I don't need someone who fits into my world. I need someone who makes my world better. And that's you." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she listened to his words. For so long, she had believed that someone like Richard could never truly care for someone like her. But in that moment, she realized that love wasn't about status or wealth. It was about two people who cared deeply for each other, regardless of where they came from. "I love you, Richard," she whispered, finally letting herself admit what she had been feeling all along. Richard smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. "I love you too, Maria, and I promise we'll make this work together." After Maria's mother was discharged from the hospital, Richard continued to be a constant presence in their lives. He helped them move into a comfortable new home and ensured that Maria's mother had access to the best care. Richard's love and support were unwavering, and over time, Maria began to see herself not as a poor girl unworthy of love, but as someone who deserved happiness and a future with the man she loved. Their relationship blossomed, and as the months passed, they grew closer, learning to navigate the differences in their lives together. Richard introduced Maria to his world, not to change her, but to show her that she belonged there with him. He admired her humility and compassion, while Maria brought out the best in him, reminding him of the importance of love, kindness, and generosity. Despite the challenges, they faced them head-on, with Maria slowly gaining confidence in their relationship. She saw how Richard respected her and valued her opinions, and how he was willing to go above and beyond to make sure she and her mother were taken care of. Their bond deepened, and they soon realized that they were meant to be together, no matter where they came from. A year after the night Maria found the suitcase, Richard proposed to her in the very garden where they had confessed their love. It was a simple, heartfelt proposal, with Richard down on one knee, offering Maria not just a ring, but a promise of a future together. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You've changed my life in ways I never expected, and I can't imagine a future without you by my side." Maria, her eyes brimming with tears of happiness, said yes without hesitation. She realized that love had nothing to do with wealth or status. It was about two people who truly cared for each other and wanted to build a life together. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, attended by close friends and family. Maria's mother, now healthy and beaming with pride, stood by her side as she married the man who had become not only her partner but also her greatest love. In the years that followed, Richard and Maria built a life filled with love, laughter, and purpose. They continued to help those in need, using their resources to make a difference in the lives of others. Maria never forgot where she came from, and Richard never stopped admiring the strength and goodness that had drawn him to her in the first place. Together, they proved that love knows no boundaries and that true happiness comes not from wealth or status, but from the people we choose to share our lives with. And as they looked forward to a future filled with endless possibilities, they knew that they had found something truly special in each other, a love that would last a lifetime. Hope you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel. Your participation is essential so that we can continue to bring you more incredible stories. Share it with your friends to help our channel grow. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.